Okay, picture this for a second. You're standing somewhere deep beneath the bustling cobblestone streets of Victorian London. It is pitch black. You're wading through freezing, waist-deep, incredibly foul-smelling sewage. In one hand, you've got a flickering lantern, and in the other, a long wooden pole. The stench is, well, it's absolutely unbearable, and the air down there is so toxic it could literally kill you. But here's the crazy part. You aren't lost. You're not trapped. You are actually at work. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right into one of the most unbelievable, dangerous, and just utterly fascinating professions in history. We are uncovering the gritty worlds of the Victorian treasure hunters who made their living entirely in the dark.
So, I've got a question for you. Would you wade through raw sewage for a fortune? I mean, seriously, think about it. It sounds like a hypothetical nightmare, right? But for nearly a century, this was a very real, very illegal, and surprisingly profitable reality for a highly select group of Londoners. They voluntarily descended into literally one of the most hazardous environments on Earth. And why? Because amidst all that horrific waste, there was an incredible amount of wealth just waiting to be claimed by anyone brave enough, or, let's be honest, desperate enough to go looking for it.
You're probably wondering, who exactly were these people? Well, they were known as Toshers. The word tosher comes from tosh, which was just a bit of Victorian street slang for valuable scraps. You know, things like bits of copper, silver, metal, stuff like that. Toshers were essentially the underground treasure hunters of the London sewer system. You see, as London was exploding in size during the Industrial Revolution, its underground drainage network expanded into this massive, sprawling maze of tunnels carrying rainwater and waste from the streets above. But along with that runoff came an accidental vault of lost valuables. Coins dropping through street grates, jewelry slipping down drains, silver cutlery, even scrap bone that could be sold off. It all washed down into the dark, and the Toshers made it their absolute mission to find it before it washed out into the River Thames forever. All right, moving to Section 1, A Day in the Sewers, the Unwritten Rules and Grisly Routine. Surviving this dark maze wasn't just wandering around, it required a very strict routine. First off, you had to wait for the tide. This was a literal matter of life or death because the sewers emptied into the tidal River Thames. Go in too early, rising water traps you. Go in too late, and you miss the freshly exposed tunnel floors. Next, you gear up. They wore these heavy canvas or leather Toshers coats, equipped with massive reinforced packets for the loot, and they'd strap a lantern right to their chest to keep their hands free. Then came the tosher stick. This long wooden pole or hoe was absolutely crucial. They used it to test the ground ahead of them because, you see, the sewer floors hid deep pits and this unstable mud that could swallow a person in seconds. Finally, once they knew the ground was safe, they used that same stick to sift the mud, just scraping and digging through the filth for anything that glinted in the lantern light. And they would do this for 6 to 8 hours a day. Now, you might think it was just a chaotic free-for-all down there, but actually, a really surprising underground guild culture emerged. Territories were strictly respected. There were these complex, unwritten rules governing exactly who could search which section of the maze. If you were a new tosher and you wanted to get in on the action, you couldn't just climb down a random grate. No way. You needed an experienced veteran to vouch for you and physically introduce you to the trade. It was a highly organized, highly exclusive club operating completely out of sight. Let's look at Section 2, High Risk, High Reward, the economics of the sewers. Think about the typical above-ground labor of the Victorian era, and contrast that with the underground tosher. Above ground, we're talking about grueling, back-breaking work. You're in factories, you're on the docks, and you were doing it for incredibly low daily wages. People were basically working themselves to the bone just to starve a little less. But then, look at the underground alternative. Yeah, the environment was repulsive. Yes, you were quite literally sifting through discarded filth, but the sheer volume of lost wealth meant that this was an incredibly lucrative gig. They weren't just scraping by down there. A lot of them were actually thriving. So, what was the ultimate reward for enduring all this misery? 3 or more shillings a day. According to historical accounts from the mid-1800s, an experienced tosher could easily pull in several shillings a day. To put that into perspective for you, that is the modern equivalent of a skilled tradesman's wage. They were making a genuinely comfortable living, bringing home far more money than the exhausted, overworked laborers walking on the streets right above their heads. Okay, Section 3, the lethal reality, surviving the tunnels. Now, the threats down here were constant, and they were terrifying. First, you got toxic methane gas. Decomposing waste naturally produces methane, right? Well, in an enclosed tunnel, that gas builds up. Just a single lethal spark from a Tosher's lantern could, and definitely did, trigger deadly explosions. Second, sudden drowning. Like we mentioned earlier, misjudging that river tide meant a tunnel could fill with rushing water in a matter of minutes, leaving absolutely no escape. Third, severe waterborne diseases from constant daily exposure to raw sewage. And remember, this is an era with almost no real medical treatment. Fourth, structural tunnel collapse. These were aging brick tunnels. They could just cave in at any moment and bury workers alive. And finally, aggressive rat packs. The sewer rat populations were massive, and Toshers frequently had to fight off entire swarms of rats defending their territory in the pitch black.
You know, because the sewers were so mysterious and inaccessible, wild urban legends naturally sprang up around them. The most famous one? The myth of the giant sewer pigs. These were wild tales of massive, feral, super aggressive pigs that had supposedly washed down the drains as little piglets and grown into these subterranean monsters that actively hunted the Toshers. It's an amazing story, but as historians point out, this was completely busted. Total fiction. And honestly, actual, documented dangers like explosions, drowning, and disease were plenty lethal without adding mythical giant pigs to the mix.
Which brings us to Section 4, the end of the Toshers, how the trade was shut down. The decline of this incredible trade happened in stages. In 1840, London authorities officially banned entry into the sewers without permission. The public safety concerns were just way too high. Then comes 1858, an event famously known as the Great Stink. The smell from the river was so horrific that it finally forced the city to undergo major modernized sewer renovations. By the early 1900s, this combination of tighter police enforcement and sealed-up modern infrastructure meant the Tosher trade had completely disappeared.
But that I should point out, that 1840 ban didn't stop them immediately. Actually, it just pushed them further underground, literally and figuratively. For decades after it became illegal, Toshers just operated covertly. They started bribing official sewer workers to look the other way. They utilized hidden, informal access points to slip into the tunnels in the dead of night. They clung to their underground gold mine for as long as humanly possible, right up until those modern sealed street drains permanently stopped the flow of lost valuables and closed off their access for good.
So the Toshers are long gone. Their tunnels have been rebuilt and modernized beyond recognition, and their lives have been reduced to just a historical footnote. But for nearly a century, an entire economy thrived in the dark, built on mud, extreme danger, and the things that everyone else just threw away. It really leaves us with an incredible question to think about. What hidden underground economies are operating right beneath our feet today? I mean, as you walk down the street, what unseen jobs, what hidden economies are quietly functioning just out of sight, building our modern world while we literally walk right over them? Keep that in mind the next time you accidentally drop a coin down a grate. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.